Versatile Mage. Chapter 311. Ants on the Same String. Jiang Yi was not bothered by Mo Fan's action. She said with a cold and disdainful tone, "Do you think you're better than my soldiers?" Mo Fan's plan was fairly simple: to totally stir up chaos. The giant lizards would surely attack the humans, regardless of their sides. Mo Fan would end up being flanked by the giant lizards, but so would Jiang Yi and her soldiers. It all came down to who would be able to survive the ambush. Jiang Yi thought Mo Fan's resolution was too naive. Her soldiers were elites in the army. Each of them was responsible for hundreds of demon beasts' deaths. To them, surviving in the wild and battling against the demon beasts was considered nothing out of the ordinary. Meanwhile, the kid himself was only a student on his first training. To be blunt, he was just like a rookie in the army. Why would such a person think that he could rely on the demon beasts to escape? Even if the kid had 10 lives and died 10 times in a row, all of the soldiers on her side would still be alive. Stop disgracing the term battlemage. You're just a bunch of scum in the army. Were your sacred vows and oaths nothing but mere talk? Mo Fan cursed them without reservation. Mo Fan could tell that the female advisor Jiang Yi had the pride of a battlemage, as if she were utterly confident in the soldiers that she had trained. Indeed, it was impossible to tell who would be the last one standing in a situation like this. Mo Fan was only betting his life on the fact that he had a higher chance to survive with his 4 elements. Mo Fan had never minded giving others a piece of his mind. His mouth had never stopped. However, the accusations seemed to deal a heavy blow to Jiang Yi's backbone. She was proud to be a battlemage, thus it was her nature to obey orders, even though what they had done today was totally unforgivable. They had lost the titles, and would be thoroughly cast aside by the public soon. Lu Nian might be crazy over his ambition, but Jiang Yi was not the same. She could feel overwhelming guilt inside, but she tried to tell herself that it was all for a greater cause, even if it meant more sacrifices and committing serious offenses. Jiang Yi saw the giant lizards and tyrant lizards gathering around them in a circle. Any other magician would totally lose their minds seeing such an insane number of demon beasts. However, in their eyes, they were nothing but a bunch of filthy lizards. "If you think you will be the one surviving, I'll give you a chance," Jiang Yi laughed grimly. She ordered the soldiers behind her to get into position as she spoke. Oh, Mo Fan was rather surprised. Could it be that this ugly female advisor was attracted to his handsomeness, that she suddenly had a change of thought and would like to discuss things with him? "I won't be attacking you. I'll be having a bet with you using the lives of these soldiers. If one of them dies while you're still alive, I'll fulfill one of your requests," Jiang Yi said. Jiang Yi could not kill Mo Fan. As a matter of fact, she would have to protect him to a certain degree. Otherwise, how could he be their test subject if he was already dead? Mo Fan's action would result in either the fish dying or the net splitting. It would not bring any good to either side, so Jiang Yi might as well suggest a competition between the two sides. "Any request?" Mo Fan wore a grin. However, when he saw the giant lizards were less than 500 meters away, his smile stiffened a bit. "Apart from letting you go," Jiang Yi said, "you're not being sincere at all, even though we're ants on the same string now," Mo Fan replied easily. They were currently being surrounded by countless giant lizards. None of them would be able to leave without a fight. It was difficult to tell if any of them could survive in the end. Who would have the mood to start a competition now? "That's the most I can offer. If you were only a student, I won't even show you any respect," Jiang Yi replied. "I don't understand." Mo Fan was confused. "I've read your information. The favorable turn of Bo City's calamity, and the wipeout of the Black Vatican in Shanghai were both related to you," Jiang Yi said calmly. "I see. If you really have respect for me, then step aside. I don't think any good will come out of it if all of us were to die here." Mo Fan could tell that Jiang Yi was not too willing to be part of the operation, but she had no choice but to obey orders. "Can't do," Jiang Yi simply said. Screw it, I'm not in the mood, Mo Fan snapped back. He initially thought he could convince the advisor and redeem her fallen soul. Who knew that she was a piece of cold metal? They no longer had the time to exchange words. The closest giant lizard to Mo Fan was less than 100 meters away. Mo Fan noticed the beast was the size of a truck as it charged toward him. Its wide eyes were showing him how strong its desire was to eat some human flesh. Fire burst. Mo Fan cast the spell adeptly. The blazing rose flame drew a red arc down the street. The flame exploded on the giant lizard's body. The huge impact from the explosion knocked its body sideways while the fire spread rapidly across its body. The giant lizard was not dead, having an extremely thick layer of skin. A basic level magic was far from enough to kill it. The giant lizard, engulfed in flames, recovered and dashed right at Mo Fan furiously, as if it could not sense any pain. Die, you piece of shit. Mo Fan threw another fire burst forward with a disgusted look. This fire burst was directed at the giant lizard's lower jaw. The explosion blew its mouth apart. It was still alive as it dropped heavily to the ground, but it was pretty much useless. As Mo Fan engaged his giant lizard, the 13 soldiers cast their magic too. Since there were more people on their side, their scent was heavier, which attracted a greater number of giant lizards. The dense shuffle on the street indicated the insane amount of giant lizards making their way toward the group of soldiers. Their cries were exceedingly sharp, like a scream of thunder right beside their ears. Jiang Yi held her arms in front of her chest and stood in the middle of the group with an expressionless face. Not a single hint of fear could be seen. As a matter of fact, it was basically the same for her to die here or be sentenced to death later. However, she had to finish the mission. She cast a cold glance at her surroundings. If Mo Fan managed to survive, and her soldiers were dead. No way, she couldn't let him go. Since she had already made the wrong choice, she had to stay with it. The commander might be out of his mind, but since she had sworn an oath to remain loyal unconditionally, what difference would it make if she were to regret her actions now? Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 312. Fighting the Lizards Solo. Lightning Strike. The lightning from Mo Fan's hands lunged forward wildly, forking into arcs that spread throughout his surroundings. The 4th tier lightning strike was able to fork more bolts than before. They could even arc along the ground. Mo Fan was currently conducting the spell through his feet, which could spread anywhere within 20 meters from him. Inside the electric field, the lightning arcs could merge with one another. The giant lizards who stepped into the field would be paralyzed, as if countless pythons had wrapped around their limbs. As their movements were hindered, they burst out crying in rage. They were so close to eating the humans alive, but were bound to their spots after being paralyzed by the lightning strike. They stared at their prey with wide, hungry eyes. Such a remarkable lightning strike. Jiang Yi had been watching Mo Fan all this time. Her face was filled with a hint of astonishment. Even a lightning strike enchanted by a soul seed would not have such a strong paralytic effect. It must have been further strengthened by some method, or its power would not be so close to an intermediate magic. Lightning strike was a basic level magic, thus Mo Fan was able to cast it as he wished. The moment the electric field dissipated, Mo Fan instantly produced another one to replace it. Despite the overwhelming number of giant lizards, none of them were able to get within 20 meters of him, making him momentarily unbeatable in the battle against the giant lizards. Jiang Yi could not help but admit that she was rather impressed. Being able to master a basic level magic to such a level was enough to indicate his extraordinary talents. That being said, the soldiers were in a fairly similar position, too. They had formed a circle and utilized the combination of ice elements freeze and the slowing effect of earth wave to form a magic field to keep the giant lizards away. All they needed to do was to look out for the warrior-level demon beasts. Glancing ahead, their entire field of view was filled with moving giant lizards. The demon beasts were flowing toward them like a tide, to an extent that some of them were actually moving forward by sliding across the bodies of their comrades. The street alone had run out of space for them to move forward. There were still many giant lizards within 500 meters moving toward the magicians. Some of them were even climbing the buildings in the surroundings. More than 10 giant lizard corpses could be seen close to Mo Fan's feet. Killing these servant-class giant lizards did not seem too difficult, but the number he had killed was nothing compared to the number still alive. There was no way he could kill all of them before his energy depleted. He cast a glance at Jiang Yi and her soldiers. They were utterly experienced with battles. They did not waste their energy unnecessarily casting intermediate magic. The students who had come on the training sometimes had the urge to blast the servant-class demon beasts into pieces with their intermediate magic. However, it was a very stupid thing to do. Their energy was just like their HP bar in the wild. Wasting their energy was the same as wasting their HP. They could never eliminate all the demon beasts. Knowing how to control the usage of their energy was the key to surviving. The soldiers were conserving their energy. They would never cast an intermediate magic unless it was their last resort. They were aware that it would take some time to drive the giant lizards back, as they were only a kilometer away from their nest. Swift Star Wolf. Mo Fan called out to signal the Swift Star Wolf to look out for the tyrant lizard approaching from the left. He could still handle the giant lizards, but the tyrant lizards posed a great threat to him. They were like lizard tanks on a rampage on the street. They could even knock the buildings down. The Swift Star Wolf clenched its teeth as it glared at the tyrant lizard among the pack of beasts. The tyrant lizard was blazing red, like a roasted giant crocodile. As it made its way between two buildings, it even slanted sideways slightly. It was utterly eye-catching among the giant lizards. The slower giant lizards around it created a path for it. A tyrant fire lizard. Jiang Yi had seen the tyrant lizard too. Her eyes flickered with the alignment of stars. She would not allow Mo Fan to die here. If need be, she would have to attack to guarantee his safety. That being said, she would use her magic to detain Mo Fan too if she had the chance, as capturing him was her priority now. Don't come to me. Don't come to me. Fuck. Is your lizard brain actually made of pig's DNA? Why do you have to come here when there are so many people there? Mo Fan was furious when he saw the tyrant fire lizard crawling toward him. Despite the curse, Mo Fan did not relax at all. Regardless of the number of the giant lizards, he could still use lightning strike to set up a safe zone for himself. However, it was not as effective against a tyrant lizard. The 4th tier lightning strike would only be useful against a warrior level demon beast when all the lightning arcs were focusing on attacking a certain body part. Swift Star Wolf, find a way and lure it to them. Mo Fan said to the Swift Star Wolf. Swift Star Wolf and Mo Fan shared the same thoughts. Their first instinct in a situation like this was to add to the misfortunes of their enemies. However, as soon as the Swift Star Wolf was about to draw the tyrant fire lizard's attention to the other group, Jiang Yi suddenly made her move. The woman was trying to protect Mo Fan while finding a way to detain him. However, since Mo Fan was trying to break the rules, she would not mind being the judge for once. Jiang Yi's strength was similar to Tang Yu back in the old days, thus the Swift Star Wolf would not dare provoke her. Mo Fan had no choice but to give up on his plan. Same as usual, the Swift Star Wolf would deal with the big guy, while he would handle the small ones. Without the help of the Swift Star Wolf eliminating the giant lizards nearby, Mo Fan could sense the pressure building up. He had to rely on the collapsed building behind him as a shield as he stood on slightly higher ground. It was impossible to relocate himself now. The area before him was covered with a rug made of giant lizards. If he were to join them together into a string, he could wrap it around the perimeter of the city twice. Mo Fan cast his magic continuously. The remastered lightning strike gave him the ability to drag the battle along. In a hit-and-run situation, he would be able to eliminate 10 times the number of the beasts he had killed so far. However, it was totally impossible when he was being surrounded like this. If it weren't for the paralyzing effect of the electric field, and being lucky that the giant lizards did not know any ranged attacks, Mo Fan would have been chewed into bones by now. Just surrender. Your lightning strike is rather impressive, but when your energy depletes eventually, you will be turned into their food. Give up, and you might still have a chance at surviving. The commander said that you're the best test subject. Although there hasn't been a successful specimen before, you definitely have a higher chance to succeed. Jiang Yi glanced at Mo Fan across the endless giant lizards in the way. Jiang Yi did not dare to get too close to him. She had to consider the possibility of Mo Fan committing suicide if she pressured him too much. Any normal person would consider dying in glory rather than living in dishonor. Since he was dead either way, why would he allow himself to be a test subject? Wouldn't that be helping the evil side to achieve what they wanted? Jiang Yi wanted Mo Fan to surrender himself. It was a pain to deal with the huge pack of giant lizards, but they could still make their way out with ease, as long as she joined the battle. However, Mo Fan was still venturing deeper into the demon beast's territory, preventing her magic from reaching him and the soldiers from capturing him alive. If Mo Fan ended up feeding himself to the giant lizards, the mission would be deemed a failure. She was hoping that Mo Fan would be thinking rationally. If he continued to act as he wished, he would end up killing all of them. Shouldn't he be accepting the truth instead? Being a test subject didn't mean he would die. Maybe. Chapter N. Versatile Mage. Chapter 313. Blood Sarira. Mo Fan would not believe any of Jiang Yi's bullshit. The woman might seem to be a bystander, trying to be reasonable with him, but he clearly remembered that she was the one responsible for killing Qingqing and Zhao Mingyu at the start. Mo Fan believed that Jiang Yi still had some conscience as a battlemage deep inside her bones, but its ratio was like a thumb mark to an entire heart that had turned black. He would survive the experiment. Enough with the jokes. It was not like Mo Fan had not witnessed the pain of the girls when they were taken over by the Mother Scale Skin Phantom. It was not like he had not witnessed the torture that Zhu Zhaoting had gone through when he was turned into a cursed beast. The only way Mo Fan would surrender was to someone like Tang Yu, who was sexy and strong at the same time, not to some female battlemage who had dark skin, a large face, and a totally darkened heart. Mo Fan hated people like her the most, trying to sound so righteous to justify their inhumane actions. Just admit that you're scum and a heartless maniac. Stop with the meaningless struggle. If you waste any more time, even I won't be able to save you. Jiang Yi yelled. Even if you all are dead, I'll still be standing here. Try and get me on your own. Otherwise, stop screaming like a bitch. These damned lizards, do you really have the lineage of the dragons? How stupid can you all be? Were you born the same way as that crossbreed scum Lu Nian? There are so many juicy humans over there, but you have to come to me instead. Mo Fan stood above a pile of debris and yelled out. It was how he had always tried to relax under life-threatening pressure. Jiang Yi felt her lips contort. This kid was rather special, being able to curse both humans and lizards at the same time. Fine. I'll wait until you finally give up. The demon beasts had the same routine with their attacks. They would first send some pawns to consume the magician's energy. Once they began to feel the fatigue, the warrior-level tyrant lizards would then show themselves. Judging from the situation, the tyrant lizards would show up sometime soon. Mo Fan, who was totally on his own, would definitely beg for her assistance. There was no way he would be a warrior who could face death calmly. Even though the new element relies on the lineage of the mutating species to alter the human's flesh, it won't be as bizarre as the Black Vatican's inhumane curses. You won't die, and you won't end up like a monster either. Jiang Yi said. What has been the biggest weakness for humans, and for the magicians? Clearly, it was that we don't have strong enough bodies. The mutating beasts were able to mutate the humans and give them flesh as strong as the demon beasts. Therefore, after many experiments, we've finally invented the blood Sarira, which can alter a magician's body. It would grant you incredible might, and if you were to merge with a certain kind of beast, you would possess inhuman powers. You could even fight against the demon beasts with your bare hands, without relying on magic. Jiang Yi continued trying to brainwash Mo Fan. She was trying to let him know how marvelous their experiment was. How significant would it be if humans were able to fight against demons with the bare hands? It would mean there was no longer any difference between an ordinary human and a magician. Ordinary people would be able to fight against the demon beasts, while the magicians would become even stronger with the new strength. Lu Nian had gone crazy because the experiment was too appealing to him. It would bring a chance for the entire world once it succeeded. Therefore, no matter the consequences, they were willing to do it, even when the government tried to stop them, even if it were banned by the Magic Association across the 5 continents, and they were blacklisted by the Hunter Union. If it's really that useful, why don't you try it on yourself? I believe you can easily find lots of crazy people like Lu Nian himself. Mo Fan was busy dealing with the giant lizards. It took him quite some time before he had a chance to respond. The test subjects in the past were all volunteers. We've still got many volunteers now, but they're all doomed to fail. Using the blood Sarira on them either turned them into mindless monsters or dry corpses when their energy was completely drawn away. Jiang Yi replied. Mo Fan finally had a chance to catch his breath. The swift star wolf had managed to drive the tyrant lizard away and come back to his side, giving him a chance to rest slightly. As he did so, he cast a side glance at Jiang Yi, who was being protected by the soldiers. Fellow advisor, if you find it hard to pursue your dreams in the army, I would recommend a new role for you. This position has great benefits, provides double identities, many subordinates, and countless holidays. The people taking up the role have remarkable ambitions, and the way they do things is similar to you. Luckily, I'm quite familiar with the people of the Black Vatican too. I don't think they would ever forget me. I can ask someone to introduce you to them. They will surely welcome you with open arms. They can even save some time trying to brainwash you. Don't you mix us with those scum from the Black Vatican. Jiang Yi screamed, as if the words had pierced her heart. Maybe she knew in her heart that what they were doing was similar to the Black Vatican, but she was not willing to admit it. She was fulfilling a sacred duty as a soldier. Jiang Yi took a deep breath, her face shuddering. She tried her best to control her emotions, trying to observe her surroundings with a calm mind. More giant lizards had shown up in the direction they were planning to retreat to. It would be even more difficult to clear a path if they were totally surrounded by the giant lizards. The blood Sarira will take in different levels of energy, depending on the magician. An intermediate magician only has 2 nebulas, but the energy that the blood Sarira requires is more than that of 2 nebulas. So the magician's soul cannot withstand the burden. Jiang Yi continued. If too much energy is drawn away, it would result in a huge impact on their soul, collapsing it in the end. However, without enough energy, the new element won't activate. Hence why you've found me, just because I have double innate elements. Mo Fan laughed grimly. That explained it all. The blood Sarira would need to draw out a huge amount of energy, which would always surpass the limit of its bearer. If the bearer were a basic level magician, it would draw more than a nebula's energy. If the bearer were an intermediate magician, it would draw more than 2 nebulas' energy. If the bearer were an advanced magician, it would draw more than 3 nebulas' energy. Furthermore, the difference margin would surely be significant, as it was overwhelming enough for the magicians to lose their rational thinking, collapse their souls, or dry out their flesh. He had double innate elements. He was the only person in the world who would have more energy than an ordinary magician. Therefore, he was deemed the best test subject. You had the highest chance to succeed. Theoretically, it would only cause your cultivation to decline, but it won't cost you your life. Jiang Yi added. Time was running out. She had to convince Mo Fan to surrender. Otherwise, even she would not be able to guarantee their safety. Is that the same thing you told those who died? Mo Fan inquired coldly. Jiang Yi fell silent. As a matter of fact, She did say the same thing to the test subjects who had ended up dead, including her own brother who had volunteered. He had died a horrible death. His eyes were full of hatred for his own sister. She could still see his eyes at night every time she closed hers. It would only make their cultivation decline. Even she had believed the nonsense. Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 314. Breaking Through, Escaping from Danger. Mo Fan glanced at the soldiers. Luckily for him, more giant lizards were attracted to the group. Several of the tyrant lizards were launching their attacks at the temporary fortress they had set up, too. Otherwise, he would have lost his ground long ago. Glancing ahead, the number of giant lizards did not seem to dwindle. He could not even see the end of the street due to the beasts swarming in his direction. He had no idea how many dens of the giant lizards were awakened by his fiery fist, or maybe it was because the giant lizards had also summoned the comrades after mere humans dared to trespass into their territory. Mo Fan panted heavily. His supply of energy was still sufficient, but he was having trouble keeping up with the speed of the giant lizards. His electric field did control the giant lizards within 20 meters that were trying to attack him, but there were so many of them that they were able to use the bodies of their paralyzed comrades as stepping stones. Their fangs were within reach. They could easily smash him into mush with their tails. This is bad. I will surely die at this rate. Mo Fan clenched his teeth and glanced into the sky. Swift Star Wolf, buy me some time. Don't let any of the giant lizards get close to me, Mo Fan said. The Swift Star Wolf quickly glanced at the surrounding giant lizards. Fortunately, the tyrant lizards did not seem to be interested in them. If it were only the giant lizards, he could help hold them back for a period of time. He nodded, telling Mo Fan to carry on with his plan. Mo Fan trusted the Swift Star Wolf. He sat down with his legs crossed above the debris. He began to meditate. He had decided to gamble. His fire element nebula had been refined the most in the 3-step tower. Since then, he had been actively involved in battles and training. He could feel that he was close to arriving at the doorstep of the 3rd tier. Even though trying to have a breakthrough while being surrounded by demon beasts was extremely risky, Mo Fan believed that his talents were easily aroused in situations like this, where his life was in danger. As such, he would have to rely on the Swift Star Wolf to look after him for the time being. A woo! The Swift Star Wolf raised its head and let out a deafening howl into the sky. A great tornado began to sweep around his body. Its scale was significantly bigger than the one before, with stronger wind. It was slowly turning into a sandstorm as it gathered its momentum. The tornado rolled forward and swept the giant lizards along its trajectory into the air. The sand spinning inside it might be tiny, but at such incredible speed, they were like bullets that could penetrate walls. The sand bullets ground away at the demon beasts, producing a bloody mist inside the tornado. It had turned into a killing sandstorm. The street, the advertisement boards, and the walls of the shops nearby were heavily damaged. The densely packed holes looked like they were left by a rain of arrows. The troop of giant lizards ended up as dead bodies full of holes, their flesh splattered everywhere. Their thick skin stood no chance against the rapid firing of the sand bullets. A huge number of giant lizards were killed in this bizarre manner. Previously, the Swift Star Wolf was only fighting the giant lizards in close quarters combat, as casting a spell with a huge area of effect like this would consume a significant amount of his energy. The Swift Star Wolf panted heavily after casting the 1000-piercing sandstorm. However, the attack was super efficient, as it had instantly killed dozens of giant lizards in a certain direction. The giant lizards were not agile, due to their bulky size. Swarming toward them in large packs, the attack turned out to be rather efficient. The number of giant lizards had slightly decreased. More precisely, the number of giant lizards who could still move had greatly reduced, as the corpses of the dead dropped heavily onto those that were still alive, knocking them to the ground. The Swift Star Wolf was utterly attentive to the duty he had been given. In order to ensure that no beast could get closer to Mo Fan, he continuously attacked with spells that would consume a significant amount of energy, holding the giant lizards back. Mo Fan was aware that time was precious. The swift star wolf would not be able to hold on for too long. The fire element nebula burned blazingly in his spiritual world, like an everlasting sun. However, it was still lacking more heat. Mo Fan wanted it to be stronger, to be more vigorous. Daddy has been very kind to you all. Now that my life is in danger, can you stop going into a huff and expand your territory to the neighboring kindergartens, please? Mo Fan went all out with his ironic humor. As a matter of fact, he was feeling extremely nervous. Holding his breath and calming his thoughts, Mo Fan began to focus on his breakthrough. All his focus was gathered on the fire element nebula. He was guiding his spiritual force to support the entire nebula. The nebula used the force to expand, like a galaxy of stars trying to conquer the void and darkness nearby, allowing its brilliance to reach further. The entire process required the magician to drive their spiritual force. If it were described as a tide, in order for the nebula and its energy storage to expand, it had to splash upon the chaotic wall of the nearby darkness and break the chains restricting it, thus allowing the stars to rise to a higher level. Mo Fan did not have much time for several attempts. He had to accomplish it within a few seconds. Otherwise, he would have no choice but to surrender to that mentally disordered woman. Why would he surrender? In Mo Fan's opinion, death was definitely the final resort. He considered using death to proclaim pride a cowardly act. Instead of using death to escape from reality, it was more heroic to stay alive and bear the burden. Woo! The swift star wolf howled to signal Mo Fan that time was running out. It was not because he had failed to hold the giant lizards off, but because his rather powerful attacks had attracted a tyrant lizard nearby. Once the tyrant lizard engaged them, the swift star wolf would have to fully focus on the battle against it, which meant that the giant lizards would be able to climb up the debris and eat Mo Fan alive. On the other side, Jiang Yi had joined the battle too. There were more people in her group, thus they had attracted more giant lizards to them. Her soldiers began to have trouble handling the situation on their own. If Jiang Yi continued to be a bystander, there would be casualties soon. However, Jiang Yi was aware that Mo Fan was in a pinch, too. Is he out of his mind, trying to expand his nebula here? Damn it! Jiang Yi clenched her teeth and forcefully fought her way out from the formation. She could not let Mo Fan die, at all costs. He was their final hope for the experiment of the blood Sarira. Advisor Jiang. The soldiers cried out in panic when they saw Jiang Yi breaking away from the formation. Don't mind me, just protect yourselves. I'll go and save him. Hold your formation. We'll have to clear a path out of here soon. Jiang Yi ordered. Affirmative. The soldiers clenched their teeth and held the ground as they helped Jiang Yi clear a path. As Jiang Yi advanced 100 meters forward, a blazing hot rose flame rose from the debris. Ahead, the light from the fire dyed the entire street red, as the overwhelming heat spread toward the surroundings like a wave. Jiang Yi raised her head from among the giant lizards in astonishment. She could sense strong fiery energy coming from Mo Fan, completely different than before. Chapter End. Versatile Mage. Chapter 315. Ninehall's Fiery Fist. How is this? How was he able to make a breakthrough in this situation? Jiang Yi was utterly astounded. Even the most daring soldiers in their ranks would not dare to act so boldly after being surrounded by demon beasts. A magician could not be disturbed by any external factor during the process, as they had to put 100% focus on it. He was surrounded by hundreds of giant lizards, who could easily take his life with a single bite. Wasn't he worried that the swift star wolf would fail to protect him, allowing just a single giant lizard to break through? Didn't he doubt that his life would be at risk while he was trying to expand his nebula? The fiery rose flame burst out above the debris, engulfing his entire body. His appearance, similar to burning lava, was more imposing than the heat of the flames. Swift Star Wolf, well done. Leave it all to me. Mo Fan wore a smile. It was relatively wild under the illumination of the flames. The swift star wolf quickly withdrew to Mo Fan's side. The raging flames were quickly withdrawn under Mo Fan's control, including the heat wave surging toward the surroundings and the fire spreading across the ground. They were rapidly drawn to his right wrist. His wrist was wrapped by a ring of flames, which were swaying slowly to the wind. Rose flame, fiery fist. Mo Fan's hair was standing upright in the overflowing flow of energy. Even his eyes burned like fire in the process. He threw a mighty punch from the top of the debris. An enormous amount of energy was directed straight into the ground. The energy was transferred at an insane speed. The surrounding ground began to crack open as if it could not hold the energy within it. 9 halls. The energy finally reached its limit. Under Mo Fan's ferocious roar, pillars of flames began to spurt upward in the area 100 meters around him. The pillars of flame were bursting out from deep beneath the ground. Not only did they cause lava to surge to the surface, they had also transformed into burning pillars. The first one appeared right on Mo Fan's body. The flames rising from his body sprang into the air. The second pillar appeared a great distance ahead. The two pillars were around 30 meters apart, but it felt like the area between the two pillars was being utterly destroyed. The third pillar appeared behind Mo Fan, which was parallel to the pillar on Mo Fan's body and the pillar in front of him. Another great explosion took place. 3 pillars parallel to the ones that had sprouted from the ground appeared on both sides as the ground cracked open once again, which meant there were 6 other fire pillars bursting into the air from underground. The first 3 pillars had already eliminated every single giant lizard within 100 meters around Mo Fan, almost 100 of them. However, the remaining 6 pillars had brought utter destruction across the place. The troops of giant lizards were burned into black ashes under the blazing fire, including the piles of corpses on the ground. 9 halls. The 9 pillars were the formation of 9 halls. The fiery pillars were bright red due to the rose flame. The giant lizards were gradually burned into ashes, regardless of if they were alive or dead. The pillars were around 5 or 6 floors high. The giant lizards looked incredibly tiny and helpless before them. Jiang Yi was also an intermediate magician who had ranked up to the 3rd tier, but she did not have a soul seed. Mo Fan's soul seed had made his fiery fist, 9 halls, extremely powerful. It was strong enough to annihilate an entire giant lizard's den. They were still surrounded by the giant lizards, but Mo Fan's surroundings were totally empty, with no sign of flesh or corpses, just piles of black ashes. On a side note, there was a warrior-level tyrant lizard among the troops of giant lizard. It had been confidently making its way towards its prey, but after its whole body was scorched by the fiery fist, 9 halls, it immediately fled for its life. Even a tyrant lizard with an outstanding defense was unable to endure the damage from the fiery fist, 9 halls. It would share the same fate as the giant lizards if it did not run away in time. The giant lizards surrounding Mo Fan seemed to be commandeered by the tyrant lizard that had fled. As their commander ran away, the giant lizards in the distance remained in place with blank faces. None of them were daring enough to move forward. This is our chance. Time to run. Mo Fan climbed onto the swift star wolf's back while the giant lizards were dazzled. The space around the swift star wolf was more than enough for him to gather his momentum up for a sprint. He dashed forward and used the scorched ground as a springboard, jumping onto the collapsed building nearby. He ran across the roof before dropping down. Even though the path below was densely packed with giant lizards, the fearless swift star wolf ran across using their bodies as stepping stones for a short distance. The giant lizards revealed their fangs and tried to snap at him. There were times when Mo Fan almost felt that the swift star wolf's tail was being bitten, but in the end, he was too fast for the sluggish giant lizards, who only ended up biting the air and the fur on the swift star wolf's tail. The swift star wolf only sprinted across the giant lizards for 3 seconds, but the fear and excitement from it urged Mo Fan to curl his legs upward subconsciously. "Brother, don't pull such a prank on me next time. I almost shit my pants." The swift star wolf turned the corner and arrived at another street covered in shadows, with only a few giant lizards around. Mo Fan instantly released the swift star wolf into the summoning plane. He hugged the walls and immediately cast Fleeing Shadow. Mo Fan had been keeping an eye out at the sky throughout the whole battle. He was not pretending to be an artistic, emotional young man before his death. He was waiting for the sun to poke out from the clouds. The buildings would only cast shadows when there was sunlight. Mo Fan had disappeared around the corner, and when the giant lizards chasing after them reached the spot, they had already lost sight of the human and the wolf. Meanwhile, the giant lizards who were being attracted to the street due to the sounds produced from the battle had not seen Mo Fan and the swift star wolf, nor did they notice a lump of shadow moving between the buildings. They continued to move toward the group of soldiers who were busy killing their comrades. Jiang Yi had seen Mo Fan disappearing around the corner. However, by the time she reached there, Mo Fan was no longer there. He had vanished into thin air. Even though he had only turned the corner, and the entire street was still filled with giant lizards, the demon beasts were only rushing toward her men. They did not act as if they had seen anyone rushing past them. He's gone. Jiang Yi stared into the distance in disbelief. Jiang Yi initially assumed that there was an element of luck when she learned that the kid had saved Bo City and fought back against the Black Vatican. However, she was more convinced that that was not the case now. She had lost sight of Mo Fan. Her instincts were telling her that Mo Fan had escaped with some hidden abilities. She would be able to track him down eventually, but the problem was, her troop was still surrounded by the giant lizards. She did not even know if they could make it out alive. Chapter end. Please guys like, comment, share, and subscribe.